So welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, I'm a gorilla in the wrist. Today we're doing the full review of the Pagani PD1701, homaging the Moonswatch from Swatch. The question is, have they overreached a little bit on this one? Let's get into it. So we're going to get into the watch review now. Just very quick wrist check. So I'm still wearing the Helm Vanuatu on the orange NATO strap, which is lovely. Amazing watch. But talking of amazing watches, let's have a look at this one. So you know the form by now, guys. I'm just going to do a very quick run around the watch. We'll then do some detailed specs and then get into my thoughts on it. So what we have here is a 39mm bezel. So a nice manageable size. The lug to lug on this is 47mm, so wears reasonably well. It's going to wear reasonably well on most wrists. The thickness, because it's got that VK63 quartz movement in it, is 13mm, and it has a fairly standard 20mm lug width on it. It has a really nice domed sapphire crystal on there, and you can see the curvature. A really good, really decent quality dome. This also has a sapphire, now I've got to get this right, tachymeter bezel, not a tachymeter bezel, a tachymeter bezel on it, which is just a glorious colour. I mean, absolutely fantastic colour. In terms of the dial, around the outside there is a segmented minute track. Let's zoom in a little bit, let's get a bit closer to that wonderful dial. So there's a segmented minute track around the outside. The indices are printed batons all the way around. Above the pinion it says Pagani Design, and then in red it has Chronograph. There's nothing below the pinion. Right at the bottom it says Japan Movement, and this one is carrying the VK63. The hands, I mean, I would call those very simple fence post style hands. They are white, but they do have a black outline against them. And the chronograph hand, the big red one, let's get it going so you know which one it is. It's that one there that's going around the outside. The chronograph hand is a really good long needle style red chronograph hand, very clear. Subdials on this are really interesting. So these are, try and see, it's hard to see. These are actually recessed, and I think on a layered basis. At 3 o'clock there's the 24-hour indicator, at 6 o'clock there's a small seconds, and at 9 o'clock is the chronograph minute. And the 3 and 9 have, well, I'm going to call them spaceship indicators on them. And then the bracelet itself, it's a really nice, and when I unboxed this I thought it was a 3-link pretending to be a 5-link bracelet. I have since adjusted the bracelet, and actually thank you to the viewer who pointed out that it was a 5-link. That's a 5-link. I'm going to call it a Jubilee because I'm not entirely sure what else you would call it. It does have push pins, but I don't think that's unreasonable at this particular price. And it does have a mixture of brushed and polished finishes, which just look really good. It's on a reasonably good milled clasp. The buckle itself is branded Pagani Design, and believe it or not, they've even had a go at, bear with me, a diver's extension. I mean, it's as ugly as sin, but they've had a go. I suspect you'd never get used. I didn't even know it was there when I first got it, so let's just pop that back in and not talk about that anymore. Simple enough. But really, really good. And in terms of the pushers themselves, a really good screw down crown to give it 100 water meters water resistance. And they're not branded, but the pushers are really good. They're really firm, they give you a really good feedback as well, so very, very impressive. Just set that back. And the VK63, which means everything bounds back really nicely. So that's a very quick run around the watch. In terms of what's on the back, it has this spaceship design. Now, I know this isn't for everybody, not everybody likes this. I think it's kind of cute. For me, for reasons I won't explain, it makes me think of the old Zoom lollies that you used to be able to buy from the ice cream man. So for me, I think it's fine. I appreciate it. Other people may think it's a bit juvenile, but I'm not bothered by these sorts of things. And in terms of cost, I picked this up for about £66 when I bought it in the 11/11 sale. You can still pick them up for the same amount. I have occasionally seen them slightly cheaper. So that's the watch itself. Let's do the detailed specifications. So let's run through the basic specifications for this one. So we have a dial width, well, across the bezel actually, of 39mm. The lug to lug is a perfectly wearable 48mm. The lug width itself is a fairly standard 20mm, so you'll have no problem straps, although you won't want to take it off this bracelet. The VK63 movement comes in at 13mm. The weight, because it's on a bracelet, is 120 grams, but because of the articulation, that makes it very easy to wear. Has 100 meters of water resistance and a very, very nice domed sapphire crystal. And are you ready for the Lume shot, folks? If you are, this one doesn't disappoint, by virtue of the fact that it disappoints. I guess we've come to expect this from Pagani Design watches. The Lume just isn't good enough on them. It's the only weak link in what is a reasonably good watch, I think. Such a shame. So let's talk about the things I don't like about this watch. You will have just seen the Lume video, and unfortunately this is one of Pagani Design's watches that has that character trait. I've seen one Pagani Design watch with good Lume, which will be done in a full review fairly soon. Unfortunately on this one it's crap. Let's be honest, this is no great surprise. Pagani Design have struggled with the Lume. So I think that's a bit of a disappointment. The other thing I guess is that the image on the back, actually I like, but I appreciate that for some people that's not a particularly grown-up thing. Maybe not necessarily in keeping with a watch like this. But that's about it really. I guess the only other real negative is that diver's extension, which I showed you earlier. It is ugly, but it doesn't impinge on anything else. I suspect would never use it. You could, but I wouldn't recommend using it because it's as ugly as sin. But that's about it really. There's not a huge amount wrong with this watch. So this week, for the Gorilla Great section, I thought we'd do it slightly differently. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison with the Pagani Design and the watch that it's homaging, which is the Mission to Mars Moonswatch. And I'll just do some of the basic specs. So the Moonswatch diameter is 42mm, the Pagani Design is 39mm. I think that's a win for the Pagani. There's nothing wrong with 42mm, but I think that this one will probably fit more wrists more comfortably. In terms of thickness, the Moonswatch is 13.25mm. This one is a very reasonable 13mm. So again, I think points to the Pagani Design at that stage. The lug to lug on the Moonswatch is slightly better, so it comes in at 47mm as opposed to the Pagani Design at 48. I don't think that's a huge difference, but I do have to be honest and give that one to the Moonswatch. But from there on in, this is only going in one direction. So the movement. So the Moonswatch has a shock horror swatch movement in it. My experience of swatch movements is they're perfectly adequate, but they're not at the cutting edge, and they're noisier than grandfather clocks. This has the Seiko VK63, a very respectable mecha quartz movement. Water resistance on the Moonswatch is 3 atmospheres, splash proof essentially. On this watch it's 10 atmospheres. The strap on the Moonswatch is Velcro. The strap on this is actually this rather nice, rather tasteful 5-link Jubilee high polished and brushed finished bracelet. I think that's a victory for the Pagani Design as well. The crystal on the Moonswatch is plexiglass. What's plexiglass, I hear? So, well, essentially it's a form of acrylic. So it will scratch. You can buff it out, but it will scratch. This has a really nice domed sapphire crystal. So again, I think points to the Pagani design. And then finally, now this one might be controversial, the case material. The Moonswatch is made of bioceramic. The Pagani design is made of 316L stainless steel. Bioceramic sounds really cool. It does. You know, this is a marketer's delight. It's made of bioceramic. Well, bioceramic is basically plastic. At least 50% of the watch is plastic. Please correct me if I'm wrong, by all means. So what you're buying is a plastic watch, a hardened plastic watch. But I have to say, I've not had hands-on with it because I wouldn't pay the money for it. But I've seen plenty of reviews where the people have complained about the build quality. The build quality on this is really good on the Pagani design. It's got elements of high polish around that bezel. It's got a very high polished chamfered edge, but really decent brushing. The finishing on the bracelet is really, really good. And the clue that I've worn it quite a lot is that the clasp itself is scratched to hell. Look at that. So I think when you compare them like by like, could I recommend buying the Moonswatch? You're going to have to pay probably £300 to £400 to get it. In almost all categories, my preference is for the Pagani design. And at £66, it's hard to argue with that. So in terms of the summary is, I would recommend this over the Moonswatch every day. It's not an Omega, it is a Chinese brand, but facet for facet, this is a better watch. And it's not very often that we end up saying the homage is better than the original. Today is one of those rare days. I hope you enjoyed it. If you violently disagree with me, by all means tell me. I love a good debate on this channel, so please feel free. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. There's plenty of good content to come. Looking forward to some very spectacular, including the full review of the Vanuatu. So lots to come. It's early afternoon on Saturday. Have a fantastic rest of the weekend. And I hope to see you back very, very soon. Thanks everybody. Bye bye.